Good morning. How's everyone? Wow, I am following some impressive presentations with Eder and Mehdi. You guys liked the hacker perspective, right? The hacker perspective, oh, incredible. So I am honored to follow Eder and Mehdi, and I hope you all enjoy the forensics. We will venture into the land of artifacts left behind by malware, by adversaries. This is what I hope to share with you today. See how this goes. Just a little introduction for myself. Most recently, I worked as an incident response manager at Cargill. And Cargill is a US-based company, but we do have point of presence in Brazil. Also, I have my own company, Cyber. I'm a SANS instructor. My passion truly is memory forensics. So I get to play around with memory forensics pretty much every day. It's a perspective that I hope to share with you. So I was mentioning yesterday that as security professionals, we have to continue to expand our knowledge. So that's why you're here, being exposed to these new attacks, these new concepts, and I commend you for that. I think that's we're on the road to becoming better security professionals, or at least surviving. Every year, SANS, the training organization I work for, every year we put out, I don't know, probably 20, 25 different surveys. This is the results from one of the questions that we asked in the Endpoint Security Survey. And what this is asking, what is this? It's asking, from their perspective, what is the thing that they're most concerned about? This reminds me of a question Tom asked the panel yesterday. But from the endpoint security professional's perspective, the things that they're most concerned about, are the ones that are most easily managed. If you look over there on the left-hand side, these are the employer's laptops, the employer's desktop machines, the servers. But all the way to the right, those devices that are least concerning, perhaps we should focus on those, as IoT is over there. What else? The infrastructure. The industrial plant devices. But I would also say some of these on the right-hand side of this, things that are least concerning to our security professionals are those machines, those devices that were hit with WannaCry, that were hit with NotPetya. I just want to mention a couple of eye-opening events here as I try to forward my slides. Mirai, Internet of Things, Mirai, one of the companies I was working with as a consultant, obviously many of us had to address our devices that had default passwords, default usernames, default passwords. So I'm really concerned as we look at VPN filter. I don't think we truly understand the ramifications yet of VPN filter, another IoT or router infection. It's concerning that these types of devices largely fall into the unmanaged categories for our security policies. And largely, we're not concerned about them as security professionals. I think there's a lot to lose there. So we're going to pivot and talk about endpoint security. But I'll continue to share some of these survey results with you. This is just more on VPN filter. The scary part about this is obviously default username pass. The malware is able to jump onto the router and then start acting as a man in the middle. Man in the middle is always bad news. So interesting that this is not of a top concern. But let's talk about endpoint forensics. Endpoint forensics can yield incredible insights into what the attacker did on the system, what the user clicked on that infected their system, allowed the malware to gain point of presence. But oftentimes, our security teams are so overloaded, operational tempo is incredibly overwhelming, that rarely are we able to go to the endpoint, to go to that computer that's infected and has been seen beaconing outbound. Rarely are we able to do a deep dive and investigate, what was the initial malware? So I share with you, this is another survey question that our participants in the survey answered. This one answers, what visibility do they have on the endpoints? And I'm not expecting you to be able to read this because it's very small fonts. But if you look over there on the left-hand side, simple things are easy to answer. Like, what is the endpoint? What version of Windows? Windows, where's Meti? What version of Windows? What is the build of the machine? As we move to the right, you see that the red bar is going up. These are our participants saying we don't have visibility into these categories. And I blow up that which is most interesting to me, the blind spots on our endpoints. I shared with you before we even started, that my passion is memory forensics. And it looks as though 40% of our enterprises cannot reach across the wire and pull back memory artifacts. This is sad news, but can you all relate to this? Do you have the ability inside your environment to extract details from system memory? Hey, someone's nodding. Like, of course I do. But what are you missing if you're not able to query? That's current system state right there. So if we're asking memory, I love Medhi's presentation on memory management. It was fascinating. But if we're unable to include this set of details, this current system state in our incident response, what are we missing? Well, a lot of things. Running processes, things that are running now on this system, and we are missing a historical view of what ran in the past. Likewise, network connections, memory mapped files, network packets, it's all in memory. So you can understand why I'm quite passionate about this. I'm going to share with you, I'm going to walk through an antivirus hit. So I have a security operations team, and they're quite well armed with knowledge of how to use our enterprise incident response tools. So this is just an example. We're not running Sophos, but this is just an example of an antivirus hit. If I tell you that antivirus hit upon this, is that a good SVC host.exe? You can see, you're saying yes. It's good because it's interesting. It's good because it's malware. But you can see the path there of what antivirus picked up. A service host process is not supposed to be hanging out in the Google directory under someone's app data. So antivirus picked this up as a scheduled scan. My security operations analysts, they know the difference between a real-time detection and a scheduled scan. Do I have to be worried if it's, antivirus tells me it's quarantined and it's absolutely taking care of this binary as it resides on the file system? But I should still be worried about it, right? Because what could have happened between the time the malware landed on the box and now when antivirus is removing it from the file system? Execution, right? Execution. So that SVC host.exe might be running in memory. My antivirus certainly has not taken care of it, and it's safe in memory at this point. So we'll continue to hunt this down. Ooh, you tell me, based on my process list, this is being pulled from a memory image that I've captured from that target machine. Based on my process list here, I've filtered on all SVC hosts.exes. Do you see the one that's the problem? And you need not even understand what these columns are to use pattern matching capabilities. Which one? Which one's the malware? The last one, he says, the last one. Why does he, we cannot rely on him. He's obviously an expert, but can we figure this out ourselves? What is anomalous about that last line? It definitely has it's different. It's different. It has a different PPID, parent process identifier. So you need not know what process is associated with that PID. You just know it's different. All service host processes should align and be spawned by the same parent, services.exe. This one's different down there at the bottom. Ooh, I can point it out. There you go. So PPID's different. What about sessions enumeration? When a user logs onto a machine, the sessions increment by 1. Another user logs in. Session increments by 1. Session 0 is the system session, where all of the other SBC hosts are associated. So we have a service host process that's associated with a user session, another anomaly. This is also, if you're doing chronological analysis, very forensics-like way to look at the world, chronological timeline analysis, you can see that SBC host is late starting. It starts way later than everybody else. So good job. High five, high five, high five. You did it. All right, so let's continue. So we have figured out anomalous path, which was the Google directory. We figured out parent, totally wrong parent process. What else? Late starting, wrong session. And this is enough for my team to say, this machine is infected with malware. We need to do a deeper dive and figure out what the malware has done. Figure out, watch its behavior. Because it was running on the box, antivirus said it had cleaned it up, but that's not the case. So we'll jump in. Of course, we want to know, I know perhaps this joke isn't funny here, but I always like to say, who is responsible? Let's fire him, right? Who is responsible for clicking on the link or visiting the website, getting the malware shoveled, taking advantage of a browser vulnerability? We want to point the finger. I'm joking. But when we are able to dig out the MFT record from memory, we can see when the file, that SBC host, was created on the file system. You can see here, creation time is boxed out in red. So I'm able to see, okay, this is when the malware landed on the box. And I go from there with the rest of my timeline analysis. This one's a good one. Code injection, always quite fascinating. Sometimes we'll have processes acting outside their normal expected behavior. So we can look for code injection, and that's a good one. More on that later. Let's jump in. Start talking about tracking adversaries on the endpoint. So really, the one we just went through was a warm-up, right? You guys are hanging in there. You did well. So what do we expect when an adversary lands on the box? A lot of actions on target, right? We have this fantastic kill chain that describes all of the preparations, how they make their way to our system in the victim environment. But what do they do on the box once they get there? That is what's most fascinating to my team. We focus on the endpoint, and we dig in and recover these artifacts that show evidence of execution, evidence of directory traversal. What were they looking for? And where did they laterally move? So we're going to be recovering some of these artifacts. Some of them might surprise you. Have you heard of the attack matrix before? Have you heard of this? Oh, nice, nice. This is a fantastic, MITRE put this together, which is a US federally funded research center. But this attack matrix has different, we'll say, tactics, techniques, and procedures that an attacker is going to employ once they gain access inside your environment. So there's a category on privilege escalation and on lateral movement and on persistence. The one I'm going to focus on, because I knew you couldn't see that, very small font, the one that I'm going to focus on is, well, we'll say lateral movement and execution. The tools that they're going to be using on the system. Wait, you know that the hard part of many of our more sophisticated actors is that they live off the land. You've heard this, right? They live off the land and they use the same tools that my system administrators use. My colleague right now, he's working this intrusion. It's a pretty bad one. It's a large medical organization, I always say healthcare, in the US. And what he found was the lateral movement was occurring with PS exec. Of course, it was ransomware, but the lateral move, PS exec, that's old school, a sysinternals tool that some of my sysadmins still use today. So oftentimes you're thinking, well, why don't we blacklist PS exec? But, that's going to be impeding productivity. So we're going to jump in and see what artifacts are left behind on the system. I'm going to be introducing to you some of my favorites, and I certainly hope that they are well received. You have passion? Right? Does anyone see their favorite evidence of execution up here? No? Favorites? All right, fine. Yeah, you do. Which one? Prefetch. So before I really start sharing my passion about these artifacts with you, I want to properly frame this, that none of these services are there to create forensic artifacts. I teach a lot of security professionals every year, and I have to remind myself and others that these artifacts that we're going to be deriving so much from, they're not for us. Microsoft has built into Windows all of these really cool things that we're repurposing to tell a story of what happened on the system. So, if some of these services are removed, we can't really cry about it because it was never for us to begin with. So I want to introduce to you prefetch files. We would talk about the legitimate reason why the superfetch service runs on Windows. It's about efficiency, loading the dependencies of an application before you even need them into memory. But as a result of the operating system tracking what an application is going to need, we get this very juicy prefetch file. I say juicy because it has a lot of artifacts, a lot of information that we can extract data from to tell the story of what happened on the box. So I'm going to share some of these with you, and we're going to pivot through an example. So first, the creation of a prefetch file aligns in many cases with the first run of something on the system. Is there anything good in there? I like the Windows error reporting. That's pretty good. Windows error reporting sometimes kicks off when the malware lands on the system, thereby crashing a process. So that's pretty fascinating to me. So the creation date indicates when a program was first run. The modified date of my prefetch file, most of the time this correlates with last runtime of a process. Dude, and all I needed was the MFT records of the prefetch file. All right. Hopefully I'm winning the technical deep dive award. Am I, Mehdi? Am I? No, I still think you're light years beyond me. I have pretty graphics. So this is the superfetch service. This is parsing one of these prefetch files, and this one happens to be a rogue SVC host. So if we isolate the prefetch for the SVC host.exe, we can see which files were being accessed within the first 10 seconds of its running on the system. Do you see which other binary I need to be worried about as you're looking at these files that are listed here? You see it all the way down there at the bottom. An a.exe, so we have the SVC host, absolutely rogue. It's running out of the DLL host directory. And then we have this a.exe, there you go, that also should be included now in my definition, my signature of what evil looks like. So good job. We can see that this thing ran 6 times on the box, just based on the juicy innards of the prefetch file. So pivoting from there, I talked about creating a signature or definition. Have you all seen an IOC, an indicator of compromise? Yes, some nodding. How about a Yara rule? Yara's good. So regardless of what your favorite way to signature malware is, it becomes an incredibly powerful method. If we see one system that has malware, signs of evil, even if it's behavioral, observations about an attacker, we can define that and take our Yara rules, take our indicators of compromise, and scan our enterprise, identifying other machines that have the same malware running on them. And this is looking for a prefetch file of an executable that ran out of the app data roaming directory, perfectly aligned with that Google SVC host process. So let's see what we can find with my IOC. It turns back, oh my gosh, this one's bad too. I am able to gain visibility into WinINI task host.exe. Now, I know what you're thinking. So far, I've showed you, 3 machines that have evil running on them. You're probably thinking my environment. No way in line with your environment, right? Like, mine is dirty, yours is clean. No. We see this every day. This is commodity malware. So this is pretty low-hanging fruit. What you're looking at is the MFT record of that task host.exe that we identified based on the presence of a prefetch file. You know, the translators are ready to wring my neck right now. Oh, so timeline analysis then becomes the next point of interest. Remember that my goal is always pointing the finger at the user who clicked the link, right? Who did this? Who infected this machine? So you can see here, I have the creation of my task host.exe, actually a handle to the particular file. But if go up a little bit higher, this is a chronological, so I'm going back in time as I move up the page here. You can see, well, how did they get infected? Oh, they actually ran the malware, Spynet, followed by a SHA-1 hash.exe. But you can see a chaining of events here. User, it could have been named something benign, like solitaire.exe. It runs it, and as a consequence, you see additional files being created on the system and entrenchment or persistence occurring. So, all right, we've got the idea now. And you can see as I speak about persistence, I'd say about 70%, based on Mandiant report from a few years ago, 70% of malware chooses the creation of a new service or the hijacking of a current service to persist on the box. Is that in keeping with what you all have seen? Service creation to survive a reboot. It may be. This one is not a service, is it? This is an auto run. And my grandparents talked about this. It's so old. They said, you will at one point in time see current version run. And here it is. You are seeing it too. What is the trigger? How is this task host.exe going to launch? What is the trigger for launch? Anyone know? If you're following along, guys are just pushing the fast forward button. Is it boot up, log on? These are common triggers, right? How is the malware going to execute? Based on the location here, it's log on. Yeah, absolutely. This user logs in, task host.exe will execute. And that is beautiful persistence. Well done. Old school, but well done. So a couple others that I'll discuss. Amcache. Like, that sounds boring. Amcache is incredible. Rolled out as of Windows 8. So most of your environments are probably Windows 10 at this point. You're going to have this other registry hive. Take a look at what Amcache is showing us. So a lot of times attackers will drop their toolkits on the box, make use of them, gather up their intel, and maybe they see that we're onto them. So they'll clear off the box. And I know that attackers are pretty good at not just throwing something into unallocated space on the drive. What do they do now? It's not deleting things. It's wiping the data from the system. So in order for forensic examiners to combat the anti-forensics techniques that are seen so commonly today, we need to use these trace artifacts, the evidence left behind of execution. And that's what AMCache is showing you here. The really cool thing is, what am I looking at? Oh, TrueCrypt. Sometimes we do insider investigations as well. TrueCrypt has been uninstalled from this system, and yet the AMCache entries remain. So the cool thing is here we have SHA-1, and this is going to hang out way longer than when the, say, program or toolkit is removed from the system. So that's a good one to know about. How about Shimcache? So we have this very old program that we use in elementary school back in the US. It's silly. Oregon Trail is what it's called. It teaches students how to purchase things at a store and then move across in a covered wagon, making sure that they have everything they need. This program, you don't need to know too much about it. Just know that the developers of the program decided that we will not move to Vista. Remember Vista? It's a wildly popular operating system, wasn't it? It was just fantastic. Well, some software developers knew that it was going to bomb, and they decided, nah, we're not going to rewrite our program for this flop. So what did Microsoft do to accommodate programs, to accommodate the software developers that made this decision? Do you remember? It was a long time ago. You would double-click an application that was only built to run on XP, and what would happen as a result? It was the XP mode. No? Like, you knew that was going to just fail. It spawned an entirely virtual environment to host this executable. Okay, so that's a wild example. XP mode is a good example of shimming, the operating system making a compatible, a friendly environment for applications to run. And so, as this is occurring, the first execution of a program, we track these things and they land in the system registry hive. And that's called Shimcache. There you go. You earned that. Shimcache, let's take a look. So this one's pretty good. This is some user who's absolutely violating the acceptable use policy. MLotto up here that we see in Shimcache. MLotto is a lottery number generator. Lotteries, yeah. So you got to generate some lottery guesses. So MLotto will do that for you. But then there's another one here. KISS-key logger package 3.4.1 and uanx.exe. This is a keylogger. So we're able to see evidence of execution even if the keylogger is gone off of the system because these are left behind in the registry hive. So, dude, you can do this. But it also, as you're sitting here listening, is any of this new? Is any of it making you nervous about what your Windows machine is tracking about you? No? Jeez. You guys are hard to make nervous or uncomfortable. Oh, I need to go check my Windows machine. But I will show you. This is Shimcache again, but being pulled from memory. Does anyone recognize these executables? These two, task.sche.exe and the mssec.svc.exe. No? Okay. What about this? Because we pivot from the presence of Shimcache entries that are notable to maybe looking at network connections. Now, what do you think? This is inbound and outbound 445. We can see that there is a remote IP address talking to my internal machine on 445. Is that okay? SMB connections from outside your internal network? Terrible, right? What did we see that was incredibly quick at propagating like this? Really? WannaCry. This is active WannaCry, and it exposes an inbound connection from the internet. And I love this. I love that screenshot. It's like gold to actually find this type of epic fail. It's a huge fail. But you can also see, based on this, and this is all pulled from memory, you can also see, based on these structures I was able to carve, that this machine is actively attacking others in my environment. So, yeah, yes. And then process list, of course. So we started with shim cache, pivoted to network connections, and then owning process, finding out more about it when it started. Now, I hope this isn't shocking, but Windows 10 is only adding more of these artifacts that are left behind and tracking user activity. It's a fantastic time to be a forensic examiner. With each version of Windows 10 that rolls out, and I think we're up to the 5th version with April 2018, the update 17134, is each version rolls out more artifacts that we can use. I'm going to share some of these with you. This one, Background Activity Monitor, we like to call this the BAM. It is tracking processes on the system. We also have recent apps, tracking the use of applications to a particular user. Attackers like to RDP, right? Remote desktop onto a system. Why not? Everyone likes the GUI. Everyone likes the GUI. So as an attacker is using compromised credentials, we have this, I think it's great, this treasure trove that's left behind in ntuser.dat in the user profile of the compromised account. We need to make use of these. The next one I want to talk to you about is the System Resource Utilization Monitor. We call this the SHRUM. It's pretty good too. It not only tracks applications, but the number of packets that they're sending outbound and ties it to a network. And this is captured every hour. We have up to 60 or 90 days maintained in a database on the Windows machine. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, more screenshots. How much time do I have? What is this? Is this 10 minutes? Thank you very much. What did you say? 12? I think he's messing with me. Yeah, he said 20. All right. So I know that who's a Linux fan or Linux? Look at that. I'm correcting myself from hanging out with Mehdi. Linux? Does anyone use Linux exclusively and disdains Windows? Okay. So I see some nodding. Well, in Linux, you have, what is it called? Bash _history. What is entered in a terminal window is actually being written to a file on disk. And I'm jealous. I mean, the wealth of information if you're tracking an adversary who's hit the machine. Well, I will tell you, just to kind of even it, level playing field, I will tell you that you can extract command history from a Windows machine memory. It's stowed away somewhere in memory. So some of my friends, they use Metasploit to this day to conduct pen testing. And when you land on a machine, you track in Metasploit, your favorite payload is probably Meterpreter, right? Reverse shell, reverse TCP. Well, it's all well and good to use the post-exploitation modules that Metasploit has to offer. But every once in a while, you want to use the tools that are native to Windows. So what do you type in? Shell? Metasploit? Shell? Who's tracking? Adversaries do like to drop into a command processor every once in a while. So do your trusted insiders. Disgruntled employees, my favorite category of employees. They're so interesting. So we might have some notable commands found in the command processor address space. So this plugin that's folded into, well, you've seen a lot of volatility output today. It's folded into our volatility memory forensics framework. This is exposing that which was entered in a command processor. I don't know. Let's see. Someone spelled the IP config wrong. It wasn't me. That's what we're seeing here. It's kind of lame. What about this? This was me. It's clear if you're looking at my command history. Does anyone know what the FU rootkit is? Is it written by Jamie Butler? FU rootkit. This is me attempting to run it, and I needed a lot of help. Your attacker is going to leave behind traces. Whether you're able to pull this out of memory, whether you have to rely on very, very cool, advanced way of setting up your event logs. I hope that you're able to see something like this as they're moving around and conducting subversion or reconnaissance on the box. All right, more event logs. There is a way to track the execution and termination of every process in Windows event logs. Now you could push this out to every machine, and you could capture something like this. This is just a backdoor. This is malware that's being run on the system. I am a huge fan of Dexter. This is to my US friends. Yeah. So this is Dexter Morgan, who is accidentally running the SheApe or ShyApe, which is a backdoor scene. When I was working at Mandiant, we saw this in a customer environment. So we're able to capture when it executed because we have our event logs set up correctly, our auditing policy. So if you do this right, you too can be fascinated by how many times your attacker ran net use. How many times your attacker ran DS query and this other tool, DS ask. What were they doing there? Why query? I guess that directory services? That's what you see him doing here. DS get was run from his toolkit, which was in the ask directory. And he's probably trying to figure out who the domain admin is, right? Create a domain admin account depending on the privileges he currently has. So this was all recovered from event logs. It's good stuff. All right, so application and services logs. Some of these are notable, and we probably want to look at them. I like the UAC file virtualization operation. I was acting as an attacker. I like to try my hand sometimes as an attacker. And I got remote point of presence on the machine, but one of the things I forgot to do was elevate privileges. I tried to drop something in the system32 directory. I was just on the box as a standard user. What happened? Tell me the rest of the story. Was I successful in writing to the system32 directory? I don't know. It doesn't sound like I was, right? You just gotta follow the storyline. I wouldn't be telling you if it was successful. That doesn't make for a good story. So, of course, I was unable to write. So system32, as that is a protected directory. Yeah, you need elevated privileges. So where did all of these, say, artifacts that were tracking this epic fail of mine, where did they land? It was in that middle one, the UAC file virtualization operation event log. Yeah, it told on me. It was like this user, who had assumed the identity of, this user attempted to write to system32 with these files, and it was shunted to app data local. It's good to know. We have also in the past, when I was at Mandiant, used some of these event logs to see an attacker's, it's pretty lame, but printer. as we knew the hacker, he was a hacker for hire, we could see him RDP into the victim environment and connect his printer, I'm sure it was by accident, to that target machine. Knowing a little bit about the attacker is kind of cool. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but hey, once we find evidence of execution, we want to know why the attacker's there. What were they looking for? So these are some of the things that would pop out in my investigation. Some of them are trace artifacts. So shell bags. Do you have a preference for how you view pictures on your Windows machine? You might go in and say, I want very large icons in my pictures directory. So I chose the small icons here for my screenshot. But Windows tracks your preferences because it's all about the user experience. And Microsoft's got it down. But of course, the forensic examiner repurposes these things. The forensic examiner wants to make use of the fact that you traversed a directory, and there's evidence of directory traversal, evidence that you knew about a directory. So this is what we may get. We're extracting these artifacts that are in ntuser.dat, user registry hive. And does anyone recognize this? Hey, how is that as a vulnerability? Is that a good one? The MS-13038 EIP? I have to kick it to you. Better. But if we saw this on someone's desktop, I would be concerned. If this was one of my employees, he has immunity debugger on his desktop. I'm seeing this from his registry hive. This might be gone, but the shell bags remain that expose what used to be on his desktop in this case. So you can see that he is researching an exploit. I don't know what his intent is, but definitely researching an exploit and probably attempting to create havoc inside my environment. So that's shell bags, an artifact all about Microsoft enhancing the user experience and us just making out with details. USN Journal is pretty good. The USN Journal tracks all of these changes that are happening to the file system on an NTFS volume. So what can I see here? Oh, this one was the SOGU. If anyone was around working, SOGU's still out there. That's PlugX malware. If anyone's working intrusion investigations, you're bound to run into this malware. This was interesting. As I was looking at this journal that NTFS maintains, I continued to see a reference or a write to nvsmart.hlp. It turned out that this was the keylogging log file of the malware, and you could see the interval of access, the interval of write that this file system was making, and that was notable. Can I convince you? That one's one of my favorites. And search database. Now, we're mostly, if you're a Windows user, you know that the search database has been one of the banes of our existence as Windows users. It will kick off and hog system resources, and you're just like, stop. You're only supposed to do this during idle time. But it's incredible the extensiveness of the search database. It allows us to find our files quite quickly, and we track what's in the search database because sometimes, even after files are deleted, there will be remnants left behind. You can see here on the right-hand side of the slide, it's the attacker's toolkit. So sdelete, his RAR files, the directories that he did RAR before he exfilled. These things are no longer present in the file system, and yet in the search index, we're able to recover entries. This one also is kind of no longer there, but we can see in the search database, the Windows EDB, that we're able to recover these items. Cool. All right, so more about Windows 10. It is quite frightening what we're seeing here. A timeline feature. Have you checked this out yet? Has anyone gone to the next version of Windows and seen the timeline feature? It tracks your browsing history. They're like, wait, I thought we already had a mechanism to track browsing history. Yeah, we do. This is yet another mechanism to track what you most recently viewed. I will also say it tracks the programs that you were most recently using. And like we needed another one of those. But this is fantastic because a user can go in and select, well, you've probably seen this. I don't know, the task view icon that's down there at the bottom of your taskbar. A user can go in and select to delete something, and yet it still remains in the activities cache.db. So, selectively forget, and yet the forensic examiner can still recover this data. That's pretty cool. So here's a parsing tool for the activities cache.db. This was extracted from the file system. So file system forensics, WXT CMD. I mean, this artifact just came out at the end of April, and we have a parsing tool already. So life is good. Life is good. You can see what I was looking up. Ridiculousness. So how can we fold this into something that's proactive as opposed to reactive? Because I think many of those scenarios I shared with you, they fell into that reactive stage. Like antivirus told me it was bad. I saw inbound SMB, bad. That's what spurred my team into action. But if we're going to get good at this, we need to get ahead of the operational tempo. We need to lean in and be more proactive. So I share with you more statistics from the SANS survey of this year. Folks were asked, how many of your potential threats were identified with proactive measures? It was pretty lean. It was 45% said less than 20% of their detections were due to proactive actions. That's dismal, but I get it, because we have very small security teams, very small incident response or threat hunting teams, and we just cannot gain traction to get ahead of the operational tempo. So I give them a pass. What are some fast wins? Data stacking. So I've introduced to you many different artifacts, and in aggregate, these artifacts are very powerful. So what can we pull back and then stack, analyze based on frequency of occurrence? These are good. Application compatibility cache, also known as shim cache. We have the scheduled tasks, prefetch, services. Services are great. I mentioned this. So things to watch out for in the stack. You'd agree. Machines that have the strange SBC host running on them are probably going to be few and far between. So they're going to be seen as the least frequently occurring. Fingers crossed. All right, some really good stuff there. So this is an example of a tool that we used in-house at Mandiant, but I will tell you and I'll agree that almost every enterprise tool that works in incident response and endpoint security today has the ability to bring back an aggregate of data from your endpoints. So this is just one interface that we were using in-house at Mandiant, but hey, this is not the stacking order that is most notable to me. This is bringing back a bunch of prefetch files, and I'm showing you that which is occurring most frequently. We probably need to turn it around upside down. So resort, and now we're looking at the onesies, the twosies, those machines that probably should be paying more attention to if there's something notable, right? Some strange setup program or SBC host, or yeah, full path definitely helps in making these decisions. So, we use a tool called Tanium. Tanium is one of these enterprise tools that I was telling you about. Just easy button, bring back an incredible amount of data. This is service stacking, and you're seeing those machines that are running the Tanium agent, but do not have antivirus running on them. You're like, wait, what? We're actually able to pull back, get point of presence on those machines, and expose that they don't have the right security protections running. So data in aggregate, it's the kind of way we can be more proactive, start asking the right questions. So I'll tell you, earlier presentations, they were impressive. Eder. Yeah, Mehdi. But the attacker has an easy job. You've heard this before. But the incident responder, we must tell the whole story. So we have moved together through an enormous number of artifacts. I hope that you've enjoyed it. But I don't want to leave. He has a superhero cape on, and that is the incident responder. He's the superhero. And I wish for you that you have some wild success in your near future in this space. So thank you very much for your time. Do you all have questions? I can entertain questions. Thank you.